Okay, so tonight's going to look a little bit different than the normal sessions. Tonight we'll go over a little bit about Echo, and then we'll get into Intro to QI from Dr. Hout. That's where the Zoom polling questions will be. So I'll be managing that. I'll put them up there. You can go ahead and answer. They're pretty quick, pretty easy questions. And then I'll share the results. We can kind of have a discussion back and forth. Then at the end, towards the end, we'll prep for what the sessions will look like moving forward. So the structure, what to expect, and then the schedule of who's up next and everything. So that'll be kind of the flow of the session. At any time you have questions, please unmute, raise your hand, use the chat, anything like that, and we will be sure to respond. So with that being said, we'll actually do introductions. Emily, I don't know if you know everybody or not, so why don't we go around and do some introductions? So let's see, Hollywood Square time. Let's go with Katie. Go first.
Hi, Emily. It's good to see you again. I'm pretty sure we've met, but I'm Katie Chasson-Downs. I'm the lead clinician for addiction services here in Morgantown. I'm a clinician by nature, and when I first got into QI, it felt overwhelming to me, and thankfully the other Hollywood Square folks here have helped me learn about QI in a way that makes so much sense, and as a clinician, actually feel like it makes me a better clinician. So I'm so glad that you're a part of this project.
Thanks, Katie. Let's see, Dr. Hout. You're on mute there, Dr. Hout. It's 5 o'clock. We understand.
It wouldn't have mattered. I mean, it could be 1 o'clock. It could be 8 o'clock.
I'm just trying to help you out. That's all.
Yeah, no, don't bother. So I'm a psychologist here at WVU and a researcher by nature. And so QI makes a lot of sense to me. And I'll talk some with you in a little bit about the differences between QI and research and how they're related, but how they're different.
Thank you. Stacy.
Hi, I'm Stacy Wanger. I'm the Assistant Director for the West Virginia Practice-Based Research Network and partner with these folks on the QI project. So it's nice to meet you.
Tony.
Hi, Emily. I think we've met before. I'm Tony Dikiaki. I'm a family nurse practitioner. My background is primarily clinical. I did work in quality for HCA in Southern Florida for a while, but that was very much related to quality related to payment, which is quite different than true QI work. So it's great to have you here and I look forward to working with you.
Thanks, Tony. Andrew.
Hey, Emily. I'm Andrew Danko. I'm the program coordinator on the SOR team at WVU. So work with Megan, Sheena, and JW there.
Thanks, Andrew. Olivia, dig in the shirt, by the way.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Olivia. I work with the team on the QI stuff, and I, in the beginning, I was worried because I thought it was primarily research, and that kind of worried me a little bit. I was like, oh no, what am I getting into? But luckily, they are different. There are some overlaps, but they are very different, and so that helped kind of make it a little less overstimulating.
Thanks, Olivia. Let's go to Megan.
Hey, Emily. I know we've met like a million times now, so you definitely know who I am. But on the QI side, I do a lot of the data for our projects that we work on, as you probably have already guessed with what we talk about in our meetings. But yeah, it's good to see you.
Yeah, no, we don't have to talk about any of the data stuff tonight. Emily, just so you know, put that away. Let's see, let's go to Sheena.
Hey, Emily, Sheena. I am the program director for all of our SOAR grants. So, but I think you knew that.
Thanks, Sheena. JW.
Hey there, I'm JW Kayla. I'm a research specialist here at WVU, and I also help out with the data here.
Thanks, JW. Let's Emily. Go ahead.
Hi, guys. Yeah, I'm Emily. I'm the program director for what we now call the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Program at Cabin Creek Health. This is my first time doing anything with QI. I have a background in public administration and policy and worked at state and local government, and then joined healthcare almost a year ago. So still feel very green to all of this.
Well, thank you, Emily. This is great. We hope we can, help you go down the path here as best you can. Can you remind me who else might be joining with your crew?
Sure. Her name is Bridget Rose, and she's actually one of our care navigators.
Okay.
She has a background in public health, and she's been with us for about 6 to 9 months. She's very detail oriented and helps with some data stuff here. So tonight is actually her wedding anniversary, and so she had a celebration planned, but she will be with us 2 weeks from now.
We'll allow it. I mean, we'll let the record show, but that's okay. Thanks, Emily. That's great. Emily, we've talked through email, but my name's Jay. I'm the director for the ECHO program and work with this crew here on the SOR grant, and then also with the technical assistance through that grant. So any questions or any comments from the group before we pull up the slides? Okay, give me 1 second here.
Any word from New River? Do I need to help them with anything?
I have not heard back from them. If you
Okay.
want to, yeah.
I can field.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so like I said, today's gonna be pretty basic. We're gonna go over some intro topics. We'll have some Zoom questions, but the first thing we're gonna really go over, and I don't know, Emily, if you've had experience with ECHO before, but you'll get an understanding of that, kind of what QI is and what it's not, and then some examples. So Project ECHO is a little bit different than your traditional telemedicine. Instead of it being that point-to-point kind of platform, this is a group of subject matter experts on one end, so say QI, and then on the other end, the spoke sites are the learners, the participants, and usually they're primary care docs, their teams. It can be anybody, administration, anybody like that. And so it's really to mentor, train, and educate those primary care providers in a specialty area to hopefully boost their knowledge. It cuts down hopefully on referrals, right? Either too soon or too late, but also makes you feel hopefully comfortable to treat those patients in the primary care setting. But obviously we're going to talk this is going to be a little bit different with it being QI focused. So this is hopefully going to give you a little bit more of a background and give you a little bit of information to hopefully start doing QI within Cabin Creek, within the substance use clinic or somewhere, and we are here to hopefully help with that. So just some tips and tricks. You probably saw these on the slides though as we were running through. The big thing is don't say any PHI. Don't talk about patients. That's really the big thing with ECHO. Other than that, you're doing everything else. You've got your camera on, you're here, you're going to participate. We're all good. Okay, just to give you a little preview of what's to come as far as the session. So tonight, and then really session 2, like we talked about before we got started, things really ramp up. Then we start getting into the meat of QI, giving you examples, also having breakout rooms with your teams to kind of plan or discuss what could potentially happen within Cabin Creek, or New River is the other group as well. This is just an example. At the very end, you saw on the last slide there, the sites will do a presentation in the last session. Really, that's to kind of plan for moving forward, right? You've done the ECHO, you've hopefully learned something. So what are kind of the next step? Is there already a project you have in mind? Is there something you have questions on? So this is just an example of the case form that we'll use for that presentation. It doesn't need to be 30 minutes or anything like that. It's a quick 5 to 10 minutes And then we really have a lot of discussion and kind of planning ahead. So that's really what the culmination is for all the sessions. Okay. Any questions on that, Emily, before we move to? Okay. All right, Dr. Haupt, take it away, and I will advance the slides when you want me to.
Well, you
Oh.
might as well advance the slide and ask the question.
Okay. So first Zoom poll question. Let me pull it up here real quick. Pretty basic. Do you know what quality improvement is? Here we go.
Everybody can answer, not just Emily.
True.
I was hoping for a joke answer like yes, no, or only it applies to such and such.
I'm
Jay.
sorry. I apologize.
It's fine.
I apologize.
Just for future reference.
Okay.
Jay has no sense of humor.
True. Dull is my middle name for sure.
And Mark, I need new dog pictures
Yeah.
from you.
That's true.
Mm.
Okay. So overwhelmingly, everybody says they have heard know what QI is. Congratulations. Let's see what we can find out here. Okay, Dr. Hout, I will move it forward. Okay.
Okay, so what is QI? Quality stands for quality improvement. And whenever you're thinking about a definition, I just actually like to get really concrete and think about those words and, just kind of rearrange them a little bit. It's trying to improve the quality of something. All right. So it's all about improvement and improvement in quality, not quantity necessarily, but quality. Quality and outcome is really what it is. It has its roots primarily in business. And it began to get applied to healthcare along the way when people started thinking of healthcare as business. Imagine that healthcare is business. Well, oh my God, is it a business? So it's not surprising that it's applied there. And I say that a little tongue in cheek, but it's actually a good thing and can lead to improvements in the quality of the care that's provided, which is really what it's about, and the quality of the outcomes for patients that are applied there. And so the way I think about it, because I'm a researcher, I always think about it as being something that's very systematic, that's done in a purposeful way to improve an outcome. And that's an outcome that's decided by a group typically. And just as with research, it's important to know why something is working, but also why it's not working. So two sides to that coin are important. And if you look at it that way, just as exactly like you would with a research project, you'll learn something no matter what. And if you set it up in the right way, you will learn something about your outcomes for a particular thing, no matter what you do. It may not be the outcome that you want. It may not be what you thought, but you will learn something no matter what. So, next slide, please. So what QI is not is it is not research. And the clearest definition for that to me is you don't have to get IRB approval or Institutional Review Board approval to do a QI project. And that makes life simpler, but it also means that QI does not meet the definition, the institutional definition of what research is. It is similar, it has shared methods, it has shared thinking about it, but it is technically not research. But let's talk about how it is the same then. And by the way, not having an IRB just gets rid of a lot of headaches, and that's an okay kind of thing. So next slide, Jay. So both research and QI have an idea, a theory, or a thought that you're going to test out. You do it systematically in an organized, not haphazard manner. And you have to measure what it is that you're doing. Because this is not one of those aha things that you can just say, oh yeah, I think this works now. You actually have to have an idea. You have to come up with a method for how you're going to do this and test it out. And then you have to actually measure the outcome, because you really don't want to just take a guess at it. So if you think about a business and the business wants to increase market share, then obviously what they're going to measure is change in market share if they have a particular intervention. And so if you're in healthcare and you want to measure a change in outcome for a particular disease or procedure or clinic, you need to actually have that measurement. You don't want to just guess if you're getting that outcome. Now, the thing that is different also is that QI is rapid, and it can and should change as you're doing it, as you learn. With research, you set up a protocol and you pretty much follow that protocol until you can definitively say whether it worked or not. You don't change things midstream, but with QI, the whole idea is to learn rapidly and apply the results rapidly when you're doing this. You don't randomly assign patients to treatments or conditions. There's no blinding. Everybody knows what you're doing and why you're doing it, including the patients. And there's no control or no treatment or no placebo that happens with QI. You're changing a specific thing about what you do, and it should be most often just one thing so you can tell what the outcome is and if it's different. But everybody should know about what it is that you're changing, and everybody should be involved in it and have the buy-in. That's very different from when you're doing a clinical trial. Now, believe it or not, Jay, I was actually thinking about this today. And I just didn't start thinking about it when I rolled in here at 5 o'clock. And when I was thinking about this, one of the things that just kind of occurred to me in terms of the similarities and differences between QI and research is, when it comes to healthcare, is think about the research which sets the stage for what an empirically evidence-based treatment or intervention is. We know from very controlled research, this is what works for this population. Think about QI is changing what you can with how that intervention or how that thing is applied or done in your setting to get the outcomes that you want for your patients. So we know that if you're doing substance use treatment, that medication-assisted treatment in combination with therapy, whether it's group or not, and, community-based resources and treatments works. We know it works better than any of one of those ones alone, all right? But getting that to work in your system and your population, in your county or whatever, is where QI comes in, because everything's always a little bit different. We've answered the question of what works. Now let's get this to work in your setting. That's QI. Research establishes that it works in general and broadly. QI is going to help you apply it and improve outcomes in your setting. Does that make sense? Okay. Questions about the differences? Any comments or anything that anybody else wants to add? All right.
Mark, maybe we can pause right here because we had a new person jump in on the call. So Tommy, I don't know if you can unmute and introduce yourself.
Hey guys, sorry I was a little bit late to the meeting. We are actually in the middle of moving to a brand new facility, and as luck would have it, has some complications. So I apologize for being a little bit late. And I'm Tommy. I'm a peer recovery support specialist with New River Health. And thank you guys for giving me a second to introduce myself.
No problem, Tommy. Good luck with the move. Thanks for joining us. We're just going over kind of an intro of QI, getting to know everybody. There's going to be a couple of Zoom poll questions to answer and discuss, but we're just kind of getting acquainted. And then the next session in 2 weeks, we'll really start diving in. But we appreciate you hopping on.
Yeah, hey, I'm sorry too about the video. I had to plug it in through my phone, and with all this moving around and stuff, I figured it would be too much of a distraction of I'm kind of outside in my van just trying to grab some notes. So next
me-
week I'll have the video on, or 2 weeks. It's every 2 weeks, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Just
so
don't
I
start.
apologize
Just don't
about that.
drive. Just don't start
Yes, sir.
driving.
No, sir.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
no,
All right.
sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Tommy,
I'm gonna
thanks for
mute
being
myself.
here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Mark, if it's okay, I was just going to make a comment. So week 2, we're going to be talking about the initial planning phase, and that's about building the team. And for us, our team has been instrumental in supporting each other and deciding, Mark talked about QI is rapid, and we're making those changes midstream in the moment, and the team is incredibly helpful to each other to decide when to make those changes, are we acting too soon? Are we not acting fast enough? That's where the team's incredibly helpful for that.
Yeah, so I would add to that and say that one of the other similarities to research is anything more than one person is always better. No one person knows everything. No one person has every perspective. And so if you have a good functional team, somebody always has something to add to the picture that will improve the way you're looking at it and likely improve the outcomes. So QI, it's systematic. It's a method that you apply to improve outcomes in healthcare specifically. Originally applied to businesses to increase market share, for example, or to improve turnaround for getting products out, whatever it may be. By the way, one of those great QI improvements that came about that was really implemented right before COVID was this idea in business that you wanted to have enough stuff on the shelf and in storage to just cover what you needed right then. And it turned out that that worked really good when you had a fully functioning system, but it was a terrible thing to have in the middle of a pandemic when you didn't have any capacity backed up behind you. So although you may do a QI project and figure out something that really works at that moment, doesn't mean it'll always work in all situations. So keep that in mind. All right, poll question, Jay.
Yep. All right. Poll question 2. It's boring. Let's just, I'm sorry, Katie, but let me pull it up. Question 2. Okay, so here we go. Have you done QI before and did not realize it? Give it another couple seconds here. Okay, so let me see. Can everybody see that? So we have, yes, that people have done it before and did not realize it. So Emily, do you have an example of that if you did answer, if you were one of the 6?
Well, just last week, the medical director and Dr. Van Horn and I sat down and we were doing some practice updates based on recent urine drug screen results and how to better improve compliance and outcomes there. So that seems maybe in the realm of this.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, any comments from the group?
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like a great project, and we may even ask about further to see if maybe if there's some of that intervention we need to put up here.
Just reminds me of like when I had a class in my undergrad, our psych professor, I guess is more like reverse quality, or reverse QI. She basically just like gave us study guides for all these tests, and then halfway through the semester she just stopped to see if it would like hinder her performance or anything, and like more than half the class dropped a letter grade. So yeah, it's first thing I thought about when you said QI, but thankfully that's a long time ago.
So an example of that for me, as a clinician, I was always thinking about how to be more efficient with how I did things clinically so that I could see more patients and take care of more patients without decreasing the quality. And so that was always something I thought about and evaluated for myself. And so sometimes at the end of the week, what I would do is I'd sit down and I'd think through all the cases that I saw. Sometimes I wrote it down after each case I saw and said to myself, so what could I have gotten rid of that I was doing with this patient or asking with this patient or this patient that really didn't make a difference at all? That, what is something that I could eliminate, whether it's with testing or whether it's with questioning or whatever it is that I do, that allows me to still get the same answer without changing the quality of the work that I did. And I always try to challenge myself with that. It's interesting because when people first introduced QI to me, it was really aversive to me, actually, because it was a business concept. And I didn't like the idea that we were considering healthcare a business. So that just kind of made it averse to me to start with. And so I didn't want to have anything to do with this because I didn't want to have anything to do with the business aspect of it. Lo and behold, the longer I'd been around, the more and more business I got involved with, which was okay for a while, but I'm glad I'm back away from that now. But the whole idea is improving what you do, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Challenging yourself to improve what you do for your patients, or I guess for your business, if it is the business is your patients. So initially I was very averse to this, but here I am doing talks on it now. You'll go to the next slide, Jay. So why is QI important? Because there's always room for improvement. Anybody who says that there's no room for improvement and they're perfect is clearly not perfect, because there's always room to improve things. Even if your process is really, really good at this moment, it may not be in the near future. So you need to keep an eye on it because things change, pandemics happen, people change, differences occur that you have to adjust and adapt to. And so you always want to keep your eye on that so you can improve that. Improved outcomes for patients, of course, is what this really should be about. We want to improve efficiencies, reduce cost and things like that. We want better outcomes for the patients that we're really here to serve. Along the way, if we're more efficient and we reduce costs, that will have an impact on those outcomes because you can treat more patients and you can do it with less burnout. That's not a bad thing. And if what you're doing is actually improving and you get that feedback, that never hurts. All right. It always makes people feel good when they get a good feedback from things. When they're at least working on those things, it's of value. So it's not necessarily the outcome with QI that's always the most important thing, but it's the fact that you're doing QI and working on it that can really make a difference. Because some things you may not be able to change it, but the effort that you're putting in to improve it is what really matters. So more of the journey than actually arriving at the location sometimes is not a bad thing at all. So, keys to improvement. Well, the first thing is kind of a duh kind of thing. You have to identify something that you want to improve, not approve, improve. So what's an area that you want to improve? And it's important that you keep it as simple as you can, particularly when you're starting out with QI. Simple is better because it's one, easier to measure, and two, because it's likely easier to influence. The more complicated you make it, the less likely it is that you'll get buy-in and that you'll get success with it. So really keep it simple. We're going to do an example here in a few minutes that I thought initially was really just too basic, but it's actually beautiful when you think about it. You have to be systematic, and that means everybody involved on this has to be on the same page. You have to have the buy-in from above and from below. So who's your supervisor? Somebody tell me who your supervisor is. Tommy, who do you report to?
I report to two actually people, Jennifer Boyd and Angela Barker.
I know Jennifer Boyd, she's aces, I think. So
Absolutely.
she's really amazing. So if you're going to do something and you want to make a change in something, if Jennifer's not on board with this, how far do you think it's going to go?
Not very far.
Exactly. And if she wants to make a change, on the other hand, and you don't understand it or get why it's going to happen, how well is that going to work?
It probably wouldn't work out that great. Yeah.
So that buy-in above and below with everybody who's going to be impacted by this is actually really important. And that also means with the patients too, if they're going to make a change in something, they have to get it and understand it for it to work. Systematic means you have to do whatever this thing is consistently, and everybody has to do it consistently. The other thing we do a lot of training with people on is contingency management. And everybody knows that with reinforcement, that if you're not doing it consistently from person to person, that it doesn't work. Whether it's your dog or your kid, if one parent says one thing and the other parent says the other thing, whatever you're trying to do is not going to work out. And that's the same thing with QI. If people are measuring it differently or people are applying it differently, you're not going to be able to get a reliable change or anything that's meaningful. So people have to have buy-in. It has to be systematic. It should be as simple as possible. And then you have to actually measure what it is that you're doing. And the simpler, the better. One, so people will do it. And two, so that you know you're measuring it correctly. The more complicated the measurement, the worse it's going to be. If you want to measure an outcome with patients and you give them a 35 questions in a questionnaire to fill out at the end of every session, man, after a while, that's going to get really old. They're not going to do it. You're not going to read through it. And after a while, you got nothing. So really think about how you can easily measure what this simple thing is that you're going to approach and change. And then the last thing is it has to be sustainable. If you're coming up with something to do, you have to think ahead and make sure that if it is working, that you can actually apply it into the future without a problem. Because if it's too complicated to do, or it takes too much money or time or effort, why are you even going to study it? Because ultimately you won't be able to apply it. So these are kind of basic elements that you want to think about when you're thinking about a QI idea. And as other people will talk about in the future, when they really get into this, when you do the things like come up with the idea and you bounce it off people, or what we call throwing spaghetti on the wall to see what will stick, the more people you have involved, the better. And the more people that own this, the better. You'll catch problems early on, but you'll have that buy-in much easier. If you come up with this, Emily, on your own in an office and then go out and apply it to people, you're not going to get that same buy-in. That's pretty basic. So Emily, you said you were doing political work. Is that right? Or government or?
That's correct. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming over from the dark side to help and helping people actually. No, I'm kidding. But you know that if you're coming up with policy, you've got to make sure that policy can actually be implemented. And this
Yeah,
is really
absolutely.
no different from that. You got to think that far ahead to begin with. All right. Roadblocks. Well, there are never roadblocks. There are only people throwing up roadblocks. So roadblocks don't happen on their own. Usually they're made by people. So think about what those people in roadblocks will be that get in the way of things working. Some basic things that we know right off the top that we've already talked about are the buy-in. So if you have an idea that you want to work to improve treatment retention, all right, the boss has to say, this is a good idea. And that means the boss of the whole organization. They got to have their weight behind it that says we're going to venture down this path, because that's a big deal working to make that happen. And then everybody else, top to bottom, has to have the buy-in that this is a good thing and why it's a good thing and why we're going to put the time into it, because nobody has extra time. I don't know of anybody in any job these days who's got time where they don't have anything to do. People have more on their plates than they can handle. So you got to have that buy-in. It's got to make sense to people. And that buy-in from above means that you will actually get the resources to make a change or do a difference. Time. If people don't have time or make the time to do it, it's hard. So let's see, you guys' work day is from when to when? Tommy, what's your work day?
Well, usually it's a 8 to 5 situation, but a couple days a week it's 11 to 7:30.
Okay. You ever do anything off hours?
Oh, I feel like my life is consumed with what I do. So I feel like if I'm not at work, I'm at work because I love what I do.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at the time. It's 5:40, so this is definitely off hours. Emily, I'm assuming the same thing there.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. And so we're asking a lot of you to do this after hours. And I'm assuming nobody at your facility said, hey, come in late tomorrow after doing this. But you're doing this for a reason. You're taking the time to do it, but everybody's got to feel that way. Everybody's got to see that it's important to be willing to do that, because we don't have a lot of extra time. Consistency. If everybody doesn't understand it the same way and do it the same way, you're wasting time and effort. And then again, don't make it too complicated. The simpler the idea, the easier it is to understand and therefore apply. All right. And the easier it is to get results, I believe. Okay. Let's talk about an example. So, hospital readmissions, not necessarily psychiatric or substance use, it could be, but hospital admissions in a big hospital system like WVU medicine, all right? So why do we care about readmissions? Well, one reason it got everybody's attention is Medicare said, you know, if you have certain readmissions within a certain time frame, we're not going to pay for it. So the person ends up in the hospital, you're going to eat it. And most private insurers follow what Medicare says. That got people's attention. All right. Beyond that, it's actually bad outcomes. If you were just in the hospital 3 days before and you got readmitted already, it suggests that whatever the problem was that you're in the hospital for didn't get fixed before you were discharged, or potentially whatever was supposed to happen at discharge didn't happen that leads you coming back into the hospital. So it's a bad outcome no matter how you look at it if you have certain readmissions within certain time points. That makes sense. So what are some really basic interventions that people came up with to address this? One is actually a phone call within 24 hours of the discharge, either to the patient or another identified person who's involved in that person's care, just to make sure that they understand everything and didn't have any questions about what it was they're supposed to be doing. To have a nurse call and just check in is amazing, because let's see, most people when they're ready to get out of the hospital are ready to get out of the hospital and they want to get out of the hospital yesterday. So it's rapid. And frankly, people, if the hospital is overbedded, are pushing to get people out as quick as you can, and you don't understand all the complicated information. That's tough for people who are very health literate sometimes to get the discharge instructions and planning correct, but it's even tougher for people who have lower health literacy. And does anybody think that we have perfect health literacy here in West Virginia? How many people think we have perfect health literacy? Give me that hand raise. Yeah, it's terrible. All right. And, you know, That's a problem. A simple follow-up phone call is important. All right, from a nurse to check in and make sure everything is understood, people know what to do. That makes a difference. All right. There was also this idea that was developed called, I think is beautiful, is a discharge pharmacy. All right. So on the way out the door, the nurse hands you a bunch of prescriptions in the old days, or now they say, go to your pharmacy, stop off and get these medicines. All right. And the doctor put them in. Maybe the doctor forgot to put one in. Maybe the insurance denied one, whatever it is. But by the time they get around to getting the medicines or getting that problem fixed, it's too late. Whatever they need to be taking the medicine for a discharge is not being addressed. But if on the way out the door, you stop off at the pharmacy who already has the prescriptions from the doctor, because you can't have the orders to get out of the room until it's placed, and you stop at the discharge pharmacy and they hand you the medicine to go. Beautiful. All right. That makes sense. So these are really kind of simple, basic interventions, aren't they? Call within 24 hours. Make sure a person has the medicines they need before they leave the facility, to make sure that if it's an antibiotic, they can take it, or whatever it is, or an antidepressant, or their Suboxone, whatever it is, that they have it on the way out the door, so nothing can get in the way of that happen. Doesn't mean that the problem is fixed, but you just cut down a lot of noise in that person's ability to kind of stay out of the hospital and do better. These are really good examples of things that are simple to address a serious problem, and simple fixes that you get from people putting their heads together. And some of that came from teams that said, well, I know when I was in the hospital, this is what happened to me. All right. So why don't one of you guys tell me something about how a call 24 hours may not do the trick? Emily or Tommy, can you think of a reason why just doing a phone call at 24 hours won't fix the problem at discharge?
I guess my initial fear is, what if what they say over the phone necessitates readmission, or they don't have eyes on them and they need to.
That's okay. If they need readmission, at least you're catching it right then. I'm
Well, a lot
okay
of our
with that.
patients don't have phones, so it'd
Oh
be
my
nice.
gosh, patients don't have phones? So you actually, and then what if you don't have the right phone number?
That happens a lot.
And what if our patients didn't give you the right phone number because they don't want you to call? Or I can think of a number of other reasons why a phone call may not do it. So you can't just say we're going to call. You actually got to make sure that you got a working number with a person who's going to be helpful and want to answer, and that may not be the patient. So there's all sorts of things that you can tweak for your particular population or your clinic or whatever with that particular thing. But the idea is to quickly follow up with the patient in a way that you can. Sometimes it's actually sending a healthcare person out to their house because that's what they need. All right. So again, simple idea. It may work for you, but you probably still need to tweak it for yourself. Other questions or comments? Next slide. So when we set out to do this for ourselves, the thing that we had is that we had to pick a team. The good thing is that we had a really great team already in place because we've been doing substance use treatment for a long time. We had a lot of people who were clearly committed and passionate about providing care and who were willing to risk it, even though they thought that QI was research, to spend some time doing this on the hope that it would improve outcomes for their patients. It was a team that worked well together, was willing to bounce ideas off each other. And using that format that you'll get introduced to, we came up with some specific problems and some very specific solutions to it. And then we're able to apply them specifically related to retention. Retention is a huge issue in substance use. So anytime a person is in treatment, the chances of them dying go way down. Even if they're still using while they're in treatment, it's still less than if they're using not in treatment. So keeping people retained in treatment keeps people alive. And that's kind of basic ground rule number one that you want to do in healthcare for any patient, including substance use, is keep people alive. So figuring out how to keep people in treatment longer is important, because we also know the longer you're in treatment, the increased chances you have of decreasing your use and then sometimes eliminating your use. And those are both even better than just staying alive. And so identifying that problem was important, and then getting the team together to do that was really important also. Having the buy-in was important. I have to tell you that we kind of, to begin with, we probably didn't understand this as well as we thought we did. But we've learned and worked it out as we went. And that's an important thing, actually. So I don't want to talk too much about our specific example that we came up with, because I think that it's going to be better done and used within some of the teaching that's going to happen when you look at the specific phases and parts of doing QI. I think a lot of the team will do that. But I'll just tell you that broadly, the idea that we came up with was that patients were really pretty overwhelmed when they started in treatment. They had a lot on their plate. They're looking to make a change. Their life is typically a disaster. And we thought we were asking too much of them to begin with, to understand everything we wanted them to understand, and then to be able to apply it quickly. And so the idea was to back up a little bit and, in a more controlled manner, introduce the ideas of treatment, get them settled and ready. So when we actually started doing more intervention, they would be more primed for it, rather than worried about, how do I do Zoom? How do I get to treatment? What are the rules again? And so the idea was to take away some of that. And we thought we would get better retention. Our concern was that patients weren't returning back to treatment because they were just overwhelmed. And the group as a whole, when you're overwhelmed, just kind of backs up and withdraws. So that was the general idea of what we came up with. And the rest of the team will tell you more detail and examples of how we came up with that and what we did and what the outcomes were. All right. So this is a flash of what we really do. PDSA, Plan, Do, Study, Act. And it is a cycle that repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats. It should be constantly ongoing. And the biggest mistake that we made early on is we didn't keep that wheel spinning and didn't realize that we weren't doing it. And so really think about that as a continuous circle where you're constantly evaluating, understanding, planning, doing, measuring it, changing it, and evaluating it. Next slide. Somebody else will explain this better than I do.
I will try.
You will
So-
succeed.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Well, we'll just keep, it's a cycle. We'll just keep trying. So for the sessions 2 through 5, we are going to do breakout rooms in Zoom, where we will take the team from Cabin Creek. They'll go in one breakout room. New River will go in the other. Some of us will be sprinkled in each one to help really be kind of in the background, let you guys really discuss and try to plan what has been already talked about in the didactic. So when we talk about the planning phase, kind of going over some of those specifics, maybe what you've already done, you didn't know you've done it, what needs to be done, things like that. And the team, the QI team, will be there to help answer any questions you might have, ask some questions to maybe get the ball rolling, but really it's time for the teams to get together. That's why we wanted to have more than one person on from each site, so they could really talk and make some progress on what could be done in their clinic, right? What QI could be done in their clinic, what questions you have for us, that's what we're here for, those kinds of things. So that's going to be the kind of the case or the second half of the Echo sessions moving forward. We'll do the breakout rooms. There is nothing you have to have prepared, like material wise or anything like that. It's more just come ready to discuss, bring ideas, things like that. We are not asking you to have anything, prepared or anything like that. Any questions on the breakout rooms? Hopefully it'll keep it interactive. You'll be able to hopefully feel like it's kind of getting the juices going. Okay. Okay, this is our last poll question. It is an open-ended question about what hopefully you're going to get out of the QI Echo. So let me launch this poll real quick. Okay. Doesn't have to be too long. It's a tweet, 200 characters, that's kind of the limit. So a couple people will give it a little bit more time here. Okay. All right, let's see what we've got here. Oh, shoot, it is not letting me pull it up for whatever reason. Or you guys can't see the answers, correct?
I can see one.
But it doesn't give you does it give you the text? Like I don't see it on my end for some reason.
And mine, it actually even says you did not answer this question. So
Nice.
Mine's
Okay.
just giving me my answer, what I put in there.
Okay, that's a problem. Well, then we will be, I tried to do it in an anonymous way, but we're gonna have to call on people. So Katie, give us your answer and then now give everybody, we'll go from there.
So I said I'll be interested in learning more about what QI looks like at a smaller healthcare system as opposed to larger, because I recognize that's potentially very different based on just the amount of people and resources that you have.
Okay. Tommy, what about you? Were you able to answer the question?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Okay, good. Yeah, I did answer the question. Basically, how to better serve our patients, but just be a better, service to our patients and try to see what kind of ways maybe I need help in or I'm lacking, and just trying to learn how to better serve our patients overall.
Great. That's a great answer. About you, Emily?
Yeah, I was similar to Tommy. I said something like a realistic action plan to improve patient care.
Okay. I like it. Who else answered the question for the group? All right, Mark, I'll go to you, but I'm a little worried. I'll be honest.
I want to learn to unmute more consistently.
Nice.
Improve patient outcomes. Although I don't do substance use treatment myself, I do work with patients all the time. And when I hear from people, I always learn something that I apply to my patients. And then the second one is more idealistic, I think, and that's to improve Jay's sense of humor.
I mean, listen, this is the first time meeting Emily and Tommy. You're killing me. I mean, come on.
I'm trying to get you to bring some back to me. Come on.
Well, we got 6 sessions. All right. Give me, I'm just trying to pace myself a little bit here. Okay. We don't take ourselves too seriously, Emily and Tommy, if you haven't noticed. So these sessions will be pretty informal. So you can relay that to your teams that joined. But yeah, Tommy, that's a great reaction. That's pretty much it. Be ready. Is all I can tell you. Head on a swivel. And if you really want to get into with the group, here's one. A lot of baseball references. Just, yeah. See the reactions? That's how you do it. It's a home run every time.
Jay.
Yeah.
you
I'm
did
moving on.
or
I'm
that
moving
Jay?
on. I'm moving on. But I know people have to get off. Tony, thank you. I think she might have already dropped off. So be mindful of everybody's time at 6 o'clock. We really appreciate Emily, Tommy, especially. Thank you for coming. If you have issues with Zoom or anything, getting on the sessions or with your team, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll send a recap of the session to everybody that's registered already from both groups, so they'll get the information. So hopefully that'll kind of maybe jog everybody's memory, but if not, please let me know. Okay. All right, everybody, have a great evening, and we'll see you in a couple weeks on the 26th, same time, 5 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.